The Holy Gospel according to Luke, as found in the 21st chapter.
Glory to you, Lord.
When some were speaking about the temple, how it was adorned with beautiful stones and gifts dedicated to God, Jesus said, "As for these things that you see, the days will come when not one stone will be left upon another. All will be thrown down." They asked him, "Teacher, when will this be? And what will be the sign that this is about to take place?" And he said, "Beware that you are not led astray. For many will come in my name and say, 'I am he. The time is near.' Do not go after them. When you hear of wars and insurrections, do not be terrified, for these things must take place first, but the end will not follow immediately." Then he said to them, "Nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be great earthquakes, and in various places famines and plagues, and there will be dreadful portents and great signs from heaven. But before all this occurs, they will arrest you and persecute you. They will hand you over to synagogues and prisons, and you will be brought before kings and governors because of my name. This will give you an opportunity to testify. So make up your minds not to prepare your defense in advance, for I will give you words and a wisdom that none of your opponents will be able to withstand or contradict. You will be betrayed even by parents and brothers, by relatives and friends, and they will put some of you to death. You will be hated by all because of my name, but not a hair of your head will perish. By your endurance you will gain your souls." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
Please be seated. Well, this week has been, how shall I put it, interesting. I don't know how all of you feel about the election. I would imagine that we have people here who are pleased with the outcome, and that we have some who are just plain stunned. Personally, I needed some time to adjust. So Wednesday, one of my days off, I spent a great deal of time sitting with the doggies on my lap, watching reruns of the old series Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Escapism at its best. Among other things, the things that surprised me as the week unfolded was how quickly people tried to make everything okay. They tried to make it okay for immigrants, for people of color, for the LGBT community, Hispanics, and other groups that were being targeted during the election. Everything will be all right, they said. God is in control, said the Christian community. You don't have to worry about anything if you put your trust in God. While I agree that trusting God is something we all need to do right now, I don't believe that instant reassurance is the answer. A friend of a friend on Facebook said best. She wrote, "If you are not part of one of the affected groups, you don't get to decide whether or not those groups get to be afraid." Let me say that again. If you are not part of one of the affected groups, you don't get to decide whether or not those groups get to be afraid. I decided to take that statement to heart because I was also surprised at how quickly things in our country turned ugly. I saw a video on my Facebook feed of white middle school children taunting their Hispanic classmates. They were chanting, "Build a wall, build a wall," with the Hispanic students in tears. I saw photos of graffiti that read, "Black lives don't matter and neither does your vote." One town found many of its walls covered with the name Trump, with the T turned into a swastika. Perhaps the most heartbreaking thing was the story on the news the other day. They interviewed a school principal who had to break up an argument between two kindergartners, 5-year-olds. One was telling the other that she couldn't go to school there anymore because she was going to be sent back to Mexico. So what do we do? And I'm asking all of you this question, regardless of who you voted for. Because we, all of us, need to respond in the face of this ugliness that is apparently being taught at a very young age. Well, for one thing, we, as a congregation, can keep on doing what we have been doing for years. We can continue to welcome people to worship. I have to read the words out of the bulletin because I didn't have them when I was typing the sermon. We can welcome them no matter what their race, language, previous denominational affiliation, gender identity, or sexual orientation is, and we can make this a safe place for them. We can continue to feed the hungry, to keep up our church food pantry, to host the monthly food giveaway, to participate in the winter sanctuary program. And we can continue to welcome and respect and affirm our Baptist and Seventh-day Adventist renters, despite our very different beliefs and theologies. And there's probably more we can do if we put our minds to it. On a personal level, I have decided to wear a safety pin. Now, if you're active on social media, you may know what this means. For those who don't, it began in Great Britain last June, after they voted to withdraw from the European Union, the great Brexit vote. It was a close vote, and it caused some real concerns about divisions in the nation. And they had reason to be concerned. In the aftermath of the vote, Britain saw a surge in xenophobia, fear and hostility towards those perceived as immigrants. This was expressed in taunts and threats. There were many reports of verbal harassment and worse on buses, city streets, and in cafes. That's when the safety pin movement began. The safety pin says to those who feel they are in danger because of their gender, sexuality, race, disability, or religion, you are safe with me. I will stand up for you when you don't feel safe, and I will stand with you when you face intimidation. Now, I have to say that I considered bringing a whole bag of safety pins and handing them all out to you. But I didn't, because I didn't want to put you on the spot. Because this is not always an easy thing to do. I mean, some of us are older, some of us have physical limitations. There are situations that will make it even dangerous for us to take some of these actions. Because if you consider yourself an ally to people of color, LGBT folks, to immigrants, whether they're documented or undocumented, to Muslims and other non-Christians, to any marginalized group, you need to remember that standing up for these communities and actively opposing injustice means sacrifice. Being pro-justice comes at the cost of alienating friends and family when you call them out for their bigotry. It means saying and doing things that are unpopular when no one else is doing them. And sometimes it means putting your body on the line for something more important than yourself. Now, at this point, some of you might be wondering what all of this has to do with the readings for today. There was a lot of apocalyptic, end-of-the-world language in our language. But where is the gospel, the good news? Our reading from Luke, as paraphrased by a colleague of mine, says, "Don't panic. Yes, the unthinkable has happened. Yes, it seems impossible to comprehend. Yes, it seems like the structures of our world have been thrown down and not one stone is left upon another." Remember, Jesus is talking about the temple, not the election. Yes, the nations are gripped by terror and dismay, and many are screaming, "Doom, doom." Be on your guard by all means, but don't panic. You see, when Luke recorded these words from Jesus, his readers were reeling from the destruction of the majestic Jerusalem temple and much of the city of Jerusalem by the Romans. The events were so shocking and earth-shattering that many began announcing the imminent end of the world. But Jesus says, don't be led astray by the doomsday prophets, who are always trying to read everything as a sign of what God is going to do next. In 2001, we heard this same reading from Luke's Gospel just 2 months after the earth-shattering 9/11 attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. It seemed that the symbolic center of the world had been brought crashing down. There were wars and rumors of wars. There was a great surge of destructive nationalism, and speculations were rife that the end of the world was at hand. And today, we hear these words again, days after the election of Donald Trump, which for some people feels like the end of the world as they know it. It caps a year that also saw the election of the unpredictable and frightening President Duterte in the Philippines, and the Brexit vote that caused a fracturing of the European Union. Many will come saying, this is it. The time is near. It's a sign. Do not go after them. Don't panic. But Jesus is not saying that we shouldn't worry about these events. He's not saying that they don't matter and that we can ignore them. He's saying that we shouldn't waste our time or energy trying to interpret them of signs as something beyond what they are. What God is doing is not changed by our election. God is continuing to call us to be ambassadors of love and mercy and reconciliation in a world that seems increasingly gripped by torrents of hatred and resentment and hostility. God is continuing to call us to build bridges, even when others call for the building of walls. God is continuing to call us to be those who will sacrifice our interests in the service of others, no matter who is standing up and inciting mobs with promises to put our own interests first. Listen, God is calling us to continue to do the work of the kingdom here on earth. That is the most important thing that we can do right now, to try to build a world that our children and grandchildren, all of our children and grandchildren, can be happy and safe and proud to live in. Amen.